Did you just read what that said? Did you recognize those academic institutions? They were the most prestigious on the planet. Did you see those subjects he both taught and studied? They're directly related to Islam. Did you recognize those countries listed in which he is known as a scholar and authority in Islam? Many of them are Islamic countries with Muslim governments. This man was more than qualified to write his book, and he was certainly qualified to put forth right definitions of words, even a definition of the Arabic word jihad. With this in mind, when one looks at the definition of jihad that Guillaume has given us, it's interesting to note that the phrase hostile towards Muslims is missing when it is describing the unbelievers that Muslims should be fighting against. Jihad is not being defined here by the scholars as the peaceful Muslims responding to those hostile non-Muslims who've started it, who've attacked them first, but rather it is a call for Muslims to start it, for Muslims to fight and attack and kill all non-Muslims. Guillaume, in my opinion, seems to be pretty friendly towards Islam overall in his book. He seems to like Islam. In my opinion, I think he's way nicer than he should have ever been. But even still, the scholar, when wrestling with the facts and trying to be honest in his presentation, cannot possibly get around the right definition of jihad as it's understood in countries where Islam has the numeric upper hand. But in case you're not convinced, let us check out a Muslim scholarly source. It is Abdullah Yusuf Ali's footnote number 1270. He's commenting on Surah 920. And he says, quote, "Here is a good description of jihad. It may require fighting in God's cause as a form of self-sacrifice, but its essence consists of an earnest and ceaseless activity involving the sacrifice, if need be, of life, person, or property in the service of God." Close quote. That is the Qur'an text translation and commentary by Abdullah Yusuf Ali. That is his footnote 1270. In the written version of the book Manhattan Massacre, I furnished you with ironclad documentation so that you can check this out for yourself. You will open it and find out over and over again that surah is really there. That ayat or that verse is really there. That comment is really there. It really says it. Once you see that it's really there, then the question becomes, what are you going to do with this knowledge? On that faithful Tuesday morning, September the 11th of 2001, the carrying out of jihad did indeed cause the sacrifice of life, people, and property, just as Ali said jihad may do. So going forward, whenever I write the word jihad, it's important for you to understand that I mean the duty of all Muslims to fight against and kill any and all people who refuse Islam, even to the point of the destruction and loss of life, person, and property in their servitude of the Allah deity of Muhammad's Quraysh tribe. Now that we've defined the term, does the Quran actually teach this horrible doctrine? Now that we've demythologized the term and given an honest definition of the word jihad, and it sounds terrible, doesn't it? The real question that we need to wrestle with and come to a conclusion on is this: does the Quran actually teach Muslims to commit acts of jihad? This is the most important question of all questions involved in this whole controversy. All over the country right now, people are getting on TV, they're getting on the internet, they're getting in front of groups, and they're talking about how peaceful and loving and good Islam is. But for that to be true, its quote-unquote holy book cannot teach this horribly evil doctrine of fighting and killing anyone who will not convert to Islam. But on the other hand, if the teaching of jihad or committing acts of holy war and fighting against the non-Muslims can be found to be defined and documented within the pages of the Quran, then we're faced with a different situation. We would then be able to see that the people who are putting forth this innocent version of Islam are both greatly deceived and they're deceiving other people. And one would conclude that Satan has the sentiment of the majority of the people in America right where he wants them right now. And the environment is not only perfect for the spreading of this religion, but it's also perfect for the setting up and the planning of the next attack. And yes, there will be another one. Who's going to be able to detect an enemy that they refuse to see? The question then is simple. Is jihad a Muslim teaching or is it not? There are tons of people running their mouths all over the country right now and all over the world saying this and saying that. If you're tired of listening to them, then allow the Qur'an to tell you instead. Keep in mind the definition we have of jihad already as quoted from scholarly sources. I'm going to cut straight to the chase and show you a verse from the Qur'an itself that actually contains the word jihad in it. Quote, O Prophet, resort to jihad against the disbelievers and the hypocrites, and be thou harsh with them. Their refuge is Gehenna, an evil homecoming. Close quote. That is Sura 9, verse 73. In his book, one of the Muslim authors that I've read, named Maulana Muhammad Ali, says of this verse, quote, here's the Quranic injunction concerning jihad, close quote. That is Muhammad the Prophet by Maulana Muhammad Ali, page 146. And once again, we see that Muslim scholars actually back up my claims and my interpretation of these verses. And I've provided the complete information necessary for you to find the very book I'm quoting and look this up for yourself at your leisure to make sure that I'm accurately quoting these people. And I've even went to the trouble of providing the ISBN, the ISBN, the International Standard Book Number, to make it very easy for you. And with the above author, you need the ISBN because when you check into Islamic commentaries, you'll eventually discover, and you'll ask yourself the question, are there any Muslim commentators who are not named Muhammad? Are there any who are not named Ali, or any combination of Ali and Muhammad, or Muhammad and Ali? But with this ISBN, you can actually pinpoint which of the Muhammads and which of the Alis you're actually dealing with. Check him out at your local bookstore if you feel the need to check on my factual accuracy. It's really there because he really wrote that. And he really wrote that because he really believes that. And he is an authority in Islam, and the Muslims that read his book really also believe that position. I've been honest and very careful in recording his words accurately. The passage says to, quote, resort to jihad against the disbelievers and the hypocrites. And in a Muslim writing, you got to understand that the words such as disbelievers and hypocrites are being used of non-Muslims. Allah's basically telling Muhammad in this one, the original spreader of Islam, to, quote, be thou harsh with them, close quote. When dealing with non-Muslims, the acts of holy war committed against non-Muslims by Muslims are supposed to be of the cruelest nature possible. That's what the word harsh means. Quote, their refuge is Gehenna, close quote. Gehenna is another word for hell. You can only get to hell after you die. Islam teaches that there is a hell. It's interesting to note. Christianity teaches there's a hell, and the world hates us for it. Islam teaches there's a hell and the world doesn't hate them. The world puts them on their shoulders, lies about them, and props them up. Props that religion up and celebrates it. Very, very double standard, very hypocritical. Quote, an evil homecoming, close quote. So when you kill the non-Muslim and send the non-Muslim to hell, they're simply going home. They're going back to where they belong. Muslims should kill non-Muslims and send us to hell because hell is our home. Hell is where we belong. That's what this verse is saying. Knowing what we know about jihad, its definition, what it is, what it involves, and what its purpose is, this passage alone should be enough to convince you of my position. It should prove my original charge that Islam is a religion of violence and even teaches violence to be done by Muslims to non-Muslims. Therefore, my book's thesis is a very reasonable conclusion, if not totally obvious, that Islam played a huge motivational role in the attack against America on September the 11th, 2001. You should be able to understand now that the cries and the urgent pressure by the politicians and the news media anchor people and the professors at the secular universities and things of that nature, and the speakers at the diversity seminar at the local corporation that cuts you the paycheck about Islam being peaceful are garbage. They're disinformation. They're misinformation. They're requests that you receive in your mind a separation between the World Trade Center and the Pentagon incident of September 11th, 2001, and the religion of Islam. This attempt is nothing more than a cheap and empty piece of bad information, bad public relations being forwarded by people who not only haven't had access to the facts, but if they had them in front of them, wouldn't care about them. Get out your shovel, we're about to dig deeper. When you're interpreting literature, context is of absolute importance. So allow me to briefly set up the context of this verse from the Qur'an that we're about to look at. Let me just tell you what's happening in it. The unbelievers or the non-Muslims are in view. Don't take my word for it. Check out the Qur'an. I will provide you the chapter. Muslims who are reading this passage and reading the commentators on it are actually being trained as to how they should see, how they should view the non-Muslim. Directly from the Qur'an itself, Sura 4, verse 89 says, quote, "They wish that you should disbelieve as they disbelieve, and then you would be equal. Therefore take not to yourselves friends of them until they emigrate in the way of God. Then if they turn their backs, take them and slay them wherever you find them." Close quote. So the non-Muslim is in view here, and it's telling the Muslim, they wish that you should disbelieve as they disbelieve. So our whole goal as non-Christians, or as non-Muslims rather, is to get the Muslim to disbelieve or to forsake Islam, and then we would be equal. What would that mean? As it stands right now, we're not equal. The Muslim is superior to the non-Muslim, you see. Since it is their goal to take you away, therefore take not to yourselves friends of them. Don't become friends with the non-Muslim, until they become Muslims, until they emigrate in the way of Allah. Then if they turn their backs, take them and slay them wherever you find them. You can act like you're friends with the non-Muslims, but it has to be an act. As soon as they show any vulnerability, you got to kill them. Very, very sick. If they turn their backs, slay them. If you're a non-Muslim, the Muslim is being trained that if you turn your back on them, they are to kill you. Gives new meaning to the phrase, "he stabbed me in the back." And I'm not trying to say this to make you laugh. It's not a joke. It's not funny. It's literally written in the Quran. I'm literally quoting it word for word. Peace not an Islamic option. Quote, "If they withdraw not from you and offer you peace, then restrain their hands, take them, and slay them wherever you come to them. Against them we have given you a clear authority." Close quote. That is Surah 4, ayat or verse 91. Allah here has given the Muslim clear authority or permission to do whatever he feels like doing to the non-Muslim. Even if the non-Muslim offers his hand in peace, the Muslim is supposed to kill him anyways. My question is naturally, what the heck kind of God gives his permission and even commands his followers to do this to other people for the crime of not believing the same way as them? Obviously, the answer is a wicked, evil, and pagan God. And yes, I'm calling Allah a pagan God. I'm calling him a demon. But my other question is, what kind of a fool gets on the television, gets on the radio, gets in front of people and publicly says that a religion that contains such evil as one of its core teachings in its primary source reference works, verbatim in black and white, who says this is actually a religion of peace? Who tries to sell that? Who says that? If they'd read this passage, they would never say that. So either A, they've read it and they're lying to you anyways, or B, they've not read it, in which case they're talking out of absolute sheer ignorance. They're speaking without knowledge. They don't care about the truth. They'll make up truth as they go along, and they'll force their made-up truth onto the general public. I would call this kind of person, this kind of spreader of disinformation and misinformation, a misguided, agenda-oriented person who doesn't really care about either learning or spreading the facts. I'm not just talking about President Bush. I'm not just talking about the higher-up politicians. It actually seems pretty dominant all over American culture right now. A sort of make-believe view of reality is being fed by the minority to the majority, and rather than checking into the facts for themselves, this majority is simply swallowing up wholesale, hook, line, and sinker, anything the minority says simply because it was fed to them through TV or through the radio or through the diversity seminar at the corporation that cuts them their paycheck. A creepy, don't confuse me with the facts, my mind is already made up mentality is in the air. And it's the zeitgeist, it's the spirit of the age, it's the majority view among our citizens right now. I don't quite understand why our people, the most educated people on the planet, the United States of America, are refusing to think for themselves right now, think independently of the media and the culture, and side with the facts. But I hope the paradigm shifts as soon as possible before something horrible happens. Either convert to Islam and pay us money, or we will kill you and your family. Before looking at the coming verse, it's important to know for your own knowledge and your own help in interpreting the Qur'an, that when the Qur'an refers to an idolater, it refers to a spiritual person, a follower of any religion other than Islam. When it refers to the prayer, not just prayer, but the prayer, it means that prayer that Muslims repeat 5 times daily in submission to their deity Allah. So with these definitions in mind, check out more wisdom from Muhammad in Sura 9, verse 5. Quote, "Then when the sacred months are drawn away, slay the idolaters wherever you find them, and take them and confine them, and lie in wait for them in every place of ambush. But if they repent and perform the prayer and pay the alms, then let them go their way." Close quote. Breaking it down into more modern terms that you could understand, it's basically saying to Muslims that as long as it's not Ramadan month, go ahead with the task of spreading Islam. How? Anyone who's not already a Muslim needs to either be killed or converted to Islam, or made to pay a fee for